He stood on that stage, millions watching, and said the two words that would break the internet. But when a reporter asked him about it weeks later, he completely shut it down. No explanation, no clarification. What is Harry Styles hiding? I'm breaking this down because what started as a simple, heartfelt moment at a live show has now spiraled into one of the most intriguing celebrity mysteries of the year, and the reason behind his silence is far more calculated than anyone wants to admit. Let me take you back to exactly where it began. It was a packed arena, one of those final tour stops where the energy feels almost sacred. And Harry, in the middle of his usual gratitude speech, looked out at the sea of fans and said something that would soon be clipped, memed, and dissected a million times over. He leaned into the microphone, paused for just a beat too long, and instead of a polished sentence, he simply said, "Together, together." Not once, but twice, with this earnest little nod as if the repetition itself held some secret meaning. According to reports from multiple fan-shot videos that night, the crowd erupted, not because it was profound, but because it was so oddly, beautifully human. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. TikTok stitches, Twitter threads, Instagram reels with millions of views. The phrase, "together, together," became a rallying cry and a joke at all once, and people couldn't get enough of trying to decode it. Was he just nervous? Was it a deliberate callback to an old song lyric? Did he trip over his words in the emotion of the moment? The theories flooded in, and honestly, that's when the story should have ended, a cute little viral blip. But then, things took a turn. Fast forward a few weeks, Harry is sitting down for a high-profile interview tied to a new project, something that was supposed to be light and promotional. The interviewer, clearly doing their homework, slides in a question about that very speech. Now you've got to picture this because the setup is crucial. He's relaxed, laughing about previous answers, and suddenly the topic shifts. "I've got to ask you about the together, together moment that broke the internet," the reporter says, and here's where it gets bizarre. According to eyewitness accounts in the interview transcript later released, Harry's demeanor changed in a split second. His smile didn't disappear, but it definitely tightened. He broke eye contact, looked down at his hands, and after what felt like an eternity of silence said, "I'm not going to talk about that." Not a playful deflection, not a witty change of subject, just a firm, polite wall. The interviewer pressed once more, and he simply shook his head with a small, unreadable expression. The segment moved on, but the internet did not. That moment of refusal has now been viewed more times than the original speech, and that's the core of today's breakdown. Why would someone who's literally known for wearing his heart on his sequined sleeve draw such a hard line around two words that seemed, at face value, completely harmless? Now, this is where I need to offer a little bit of my own perspective, because as someone who's followed his career for years, this didn't look like star being difficult behavior, it looked like protection. There's a difference that gets lost in the hot take cycle. I don't have any secret inside information, and all of this is based on publicly available footage and credible entertainment reports, but the pattern is too fascinating to ignore. Harry Styles has navigated unimaginable fame by giving just enough of himself to feel accessible while keeping an almost old-school mystique about the things that truly matter to him. And I think that tiny phrase, "together, together," accidentally became one of those protected things. But we'll get to the deeper psychology in a moment, because first, you need to understand the tidal wave of reaction that made his silence feel so deafening. In the days following that interview clip went viral again, a source described as close to the singer's team told a reputable entertainment outlet that Harry values the spontaneity of live performance and doesn't like to over-explain moments that were meant to be felt rather than analyzed. That one quote, according to reports, was given off the record and later confirmed by a second unnamed insider. If there's any truth to it, and I have to stress that it is not officially confirmed by his publicist, it would completely reframe the entire saga. It would mean we're not looking at a secret, we're looking at a boundary. And that's where things get genuinely interesting, because it forces us to ask a much bigger question. In an era where every celebrity sneeze gets a press release, what does it mean when one of the biggest stars on the planet decides to cordon off a tiny two-word moment and say, "No, you can't have this one"? You see, the satisfaction here should be that we finally have an explanation, but now a new curiosity emerges. Was that moment so personally significant that speaking about it would somehow diminish it? Consider the context. Harry was wrapping up a massive tour that had lasted years, an emotionally exhausting cycle of performing and connecting. Multiple mental health experts who have spoken generally about post-tour psychology, not about him specifically, say that artists often experience a kind of raw vulnerability at the finish line. Words come out unfiltered, and later, trying to capture that in a sterile interview setting can feel like trying to describe a dream that's already slipping away. It's not that he's hiding something sinister, it might be that he's protecting something fragile, and that, right there, flips the entire narrative on its head. Suddenly, his silence looks less like evasion and more like reverence. But I've got to add a little sarcasm here because honestly, the mental gymnastics people performed online were almost Olympic. You had accounts claiming the speech was a coded cry for help. Others insisted it was an elaborate marketing tease for an unreleased song called Together Together, a track that, mind you, has never appeared on any registry or leak. A few even linked it to an obscure film script he was supposedly reading. I mean, the man said 2 words, repeated them for emphasis, and somehow we've built a cinematic universe around them. It's equal parts hilarious and impressive. Jokes aside, the fact that Harry hasn't laughed it off or made a self-deprecating comment on stage tells you everything. He's a master of controlling his own narrative, and if he wanted this meme dead, he could have killed it with a single witty tweet. That he chose not to means this pocket of privacy was chosen deliberately. So where does that leave us? We've got a viral speech, a refusal that became bigger than the speech itself, and a fan base split between those who respect the boundary and those ravenous for a crumb of closure. Now, here's the part that ties everything together and might just shift how you watch every celebrity interview from now on. A media analyst I follow made a brilliant point recently that applies perfectly here. She said that when a public figure refuses to explain a vulnerable moment, they're not just guarding their own psyche, they're rejecting the idea that everything is content. And if Harry Styles, a man whose career thrives on emotional connection, is signaling that not every beautiful mess belongs to the audience, that's actually a powerfully modern statement. It's a quiet rebellion against the machine that wants to chew up authenticity and spit out sanitized headlines. My own opinion, and I'm not pretending this is objective news, is that there's something deeply respectable about a star who says, I gave you the music, I gave you the show, but this one little thing is mine. It makes the moment more valuable, not less. And yet, the curiosity endures, because here's the final loop that nobody has quite closed, and I'm not sure I can close it either. During that same interview, after the refusal, the reporter asked a seemingly unrelated question about the importance of live connection. Harry answered in detail, talking about the electric feedback loop between performer and crowd. Listen carefully to his wording in the public recording. He uses the phrase, when we're in it together, there's nothing like it. In it together. Not exactly together, but awfully close. That single line buried in a longer answer about concert energy could be the accidental key. It might be that the viral phrase was never meant to be a standalone statement, just a fragment of a larger thought that got clipped and amplified. By refusing to address the meme, he might have been trying to keep the focus on the full sentiment, the real togetherness, not a quirky soundbite. It's a theory that fits the evidence without any need for a scandal. So, after all this, the story is no longer just about 2 words. It's about how we consume fame, how we demand explanations for things that were never hiding anything, and how one artist's quiet no can generate more noise than 1,000 press releases. Thanks for sticking with me on this ride. If this kind of deep dive into the hidden side of pop culture is your thing, you know what to do. Subscribe and hit that bell, because the next time a celebrity goes silent, you'll want to understand why before the headlines get it wrong. Until then, keep looking closer.